Board of Supervisors. We'll start. I will provide an invocation, and Mr. Miller will lead us in the pledge. If everyone could please rise.
This conference will now be recorded.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. We'll now have public comment. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we will ask that you offer those comments at the time of public hearing. If you're here for public comment, please provide your name and address before speaking. Public comment is open. Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online for public comment?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Members, did anyone receive any correspondence to be entered into the record? Okay, in that case, I will close public comment and we will move over on to CIP. So we will start, Mr. Miller, with CIP overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So here we are again tonight, and normally this process is a couple months after we've done most of our work on the operating budget, but this year we obviously have moved up the timeline on the capital improvement program. And I think that has a couple of very important values that will be evident, and that is the ability for our staff to get to work on some of these projects and to get the ordering done that comes with it, because we have, obviously encountered some of those delays. So doing this earlier and having it approved and all that in an earlier fashion is going to be very helpful for our staff to plan. I think that they would all agree with that. I think it also gives you a look, and it gives the citizens a look of, what are those capital items? What are those major infrastructure projects that we have going on? And, you see the tangible results. So we do have a little overview, a little agenda. I know the most important part of it is the part where the department heads, and we have Sheriff Giles and we have Ms. Hart from the Commissioner of Revenue's office here to present their CIP projects. So those are the most important parts of it. But if you bear with us, we have a little bit of an overview of what goes on and what the process is all about. So it's prepared pursuant to Article 5 of the Code of Virginia. It's a guide toward the provision of public facilities and equipment. It serves as a planning instrument to identify needed capital projects and coordinate the financing and timing of improvements. It's reviewed and adjusted annually based on current circumstances and opportunities. This is the process. It's the county departments received their submittal, their instructions for this year. The process runs concurrent with the operating budget. Submittals are reviewed by the finance department and myself for the completeness and forwarded to the department or the community development director, who then coordinates with the planning commission. I think that's the one key thing that for any citizen who is kind of wondering about the process, there is a element involving the planning commission where it goes to the planning commission, they approve it, they hold a public hearing, and they then rank these projects. And so all these projects you see have little red numbers off to the side. That's a ranking that it was done by the planning commission members. The Board of Supervisors obviously takes that into consideration, but they also can move off in a different direction if they so choose as well. So, but it is a process, and it does involve, a couple meetings that we have to work through. So following the public hearing, the Planning Commission provides the recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. That recommendation was submitted to the board at the last meeting in the form of a letter from Ms. Hall, our Community Development Director, based on the directions from the Planning Commission. And then, of course, the Board of Supervisors, which starts tonight, discusses and adopts a 5-year CIP and capital budget and appropriates the capital funds for the current year. That's the other important element of the CIP, is that it provides you a 5-year outlook, and it shows what each of these departments are thinking and needing, and what the priorities are for the Board of Supervisors over a 5-year period. And then but it's only appropriated in the current or the upcoming fiscal year. They can obviously identify for planning purposes funds to be carried over and things like that. But essentially, you're looking at the current year, but it's meant to be a planning document to show that, we're looking at things in a long-term 5-year period. Okay, so there's your presentations, and I'll turn it back over to the chair, Mr. Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We'll work our way down the line. Sheriff?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Citizen Review Board. As you know, King George County is bordered on the north by a Potomac River and the south by the Rappahannock River. The law enforcement jurisdiction for the Potomac River is Charles County, Maryland, though. The law enforcement jurisdiction for the Rappahannock is King George County. In October of 2021, the Port Authority Security, through FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security, awarded King George Sheriff's Office a grant. The thought behind them awarding us the grant is to better assist in protecting the Potomac River and the Rappahannock River in case of a terrorist attack, either foreign or domestic. The boat would also be useful in assisting bordering jurisdictions as needed. The awarded grant is for $280,310.63. King George County would be responsible for 34% of the cost of that grant, or the cost of the boat. The breakdown is King George County is responsible for $94,474.95. And the Port Authority would fund $185,835.68. I'm requesting the full $280,311.00 in FYI 2024 to purchase a 23-foot center console patrol boat. The Port Authority is reimbursing the county the $94,474.95. The grant will expire in FYI 2025. Keeping in mind, though, that if we are approved to move forward with the purchase, it will take approximately 1 year to complete the boat. Payment on the boat wouldn't be made until we take possession. If approved in the FY25 instead of FY24, it'd be too late. And the grant money would go back to the federal government. So having all that in mind, I appreciate your time, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions for Sheriff about this? Mr. Collins?
So when you had some patrol cars that were replaced, they upped the cost of them. Would this be a set price, contracted price?
As it stands right now, the quote that we took was back in August of 21. So there is that possibility that it could raise, yes.
Would the expectation still be that the grant would cover then, what was it, 66% of it?
The grant would cover everything but 34% of it.
Okay, so if the price did go up, it would be the ratio still?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that properly. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone, Mr. Stats?
Just one thing, would there be any annual maintenance upkeep costs that the county would have to incur every year?
Yeah, there is maintenance costs for a boat, and and then there's the training and so on and so forth. So yes, there would be.
Just a quick question, just for clarification for those listening in. So the boat would be able to help with rescues on the Potomac and if any security concerns, right? That it would be able to do more than we have currently.
Yes, ma'am. As far as any type of enforcement, rescuing, yeah, that we'd probably fall under the MOU of the fire department for any type of rescue. But as far as any type of enforcement, we'd have to go through an MOU with Charles County.
And will we have a staff member that will regularly go out on the boat, or only when needed?
Depends on my staffing.
Okay.
That it would, in the perfect world, with an MOU and the training that we would have to get as far as, the Maryland nautical laws and so on and so forth, that we could do patrols. but it would all be according to staffing.
Right, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Sheriff? All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Ms. Hart, Commissioner Revenue.
Good evening, everyone. We're here tonight requesting the vision program now. Our CAMA system that we use in our office is being phased out, and it will be a vision program through Vision Government Solutions, and it's a definite upgrade for us, much more efficient for my staff to do their work. It's just unbelievable. It's like I'm going to start giving them all more jobs because they're going to be so caught up. And it will help. I feel also, I always had the need to have one, maybe two more staff members, but by having this system, I think it's going to help a lot in cutting down in hiring one or two more people for now using this system. I'm going to stop right here and let Regina take over. She's been following it more thorough and closer than I have, and she's going to give you some info.
Vision has purchased Stonewall Technologies, so that will be, the camera will be phased out. So we will be considered an upgrade if we go forward now, whereas if it's a purchase, it would be approximately 50% more than what it is right now. There is an annual fee after the initial cost, but they have informed us that they are willing to work with us over a series of budget cycles for the initial cost if we're unable to fulfill it right now. We're still going to have the same personal touch with the folks that we do right now. They're a phone call away. It's not like a help desk where we can't reach them. From what I understand, the software that the meetings that we've had recently, this will interact well with that, with each one of them from what I take. They also have annual group meetings to discuss questions or concerns, which is a huge help. So we're not just left out there, we can learn and grow with the program. GIS will link right to it. So we will end up having field sheets available on the GIS. So I know there was indication that we needed to mail them out, which would be quite costly. And so that would help with avoiding the cost there. And folks would have it at their fingertips pretty much. It's configurable. It's made to work with what we need. And it's mostly a Windows product. So for my land use, more specifically, it will cut the amount of time that I spend on there by a lot. I just can't even tell you. They're all Word documents, and when we have the reassessment, I have to touch on each one and manually go in and change the rate and do the calculations on each individual application. So with this program, I enter it one time, and it's able to print the applications.
There's a button.
It's really nice. As far as real estate, because it is a real estate program, the ease of working with this is incredible. Right now, with our program, you key in, north by this much, east by this much, and with this program, you take your mouse and you draw it, and boom, you're done with sketch, and it's perfect. With the other one we have now, sometimes by the time you're done, it flips it and it's opposite. So we're looking forward to getting this.
We've had one training with them. They came down and gave us a lesson on it, and it was fabulous. And Mr. Dines sat in on one of those training. Is there anything that we've maybe left out that should be said, or your thoughts on it?
I don't think so. You pretty much said everything. The best thing about it is this company is pretty much all over the state of Virginia now, since a lot of the people had Stonewall Technologies before. And their representative that they used to work with closely with issues and with support, Goldie is the one that has been swooped up by those people too. So she's part of that team. So she knows the county and Judy well. So it's a nice program. And the fact, like they said, that we're able to work with people, with the user groups, and if there are issues or upgrades that they would like, they can all get together and request that, and then they can work in their back rooms and get everything fixed up and then push it out to everyone. So it's like a group type environment for them.
Thank you, Chris. That's it.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Stonell?
You guys said you use it a lot in the office, but I kind of, and it's for real estate, but can you, I tried to look it up, but I didn't get any self-service in here. So what is it exactly?
Go ahead.
So right now we have a CAMA program. We are able to key in all of the information from transfers to new construction, entering the whole process there. And from that, it connects to our Bright system, and the Bright does the billing of all the information and the specifics on the parcel and the home. So this would kind of take the place of the CAMA program that we have currently. And as they had stated to us, the CAMA program is being phased out. So we're going to have to move to something eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, thank you. What's the annual fee?
The annual fee is $25,000.
The cost of the program is 75. They, you know, if the county chooses, we could split that up over 3 years and pay that all up front. They're willing to work with us.
So when you say split it up, would that then mean 50,000 a year? Is that, I'm a little confused by what you're trying to say.
Perhaps 25 this cycle, next year, next budget cycle, 25.
I'm tracking that, but then you said there's an annual fee, plus there's the upfront 75,000 installation fee, which they'll break up. Plus then they're saying there's also an annual fee. So it'd be 25 for the annual fee, and then they'd break up the installation fee over 3 years is what you're saying, to do 25, 3 years. So it'd be, for the first 3 years, it'd be like 50,000. Okay, just want to make sure I understood that right. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you, ladies. Dr. Boyd.
Good evening, Chairman Granger, members of the board, members of the advisory committee. So I provided handouts for you this evening. You should have them at your workstation there. And what I'd like to do, if there's no objection, is come back to the preschool at the very end. I imagine there'll be more questions about the preschool. So I'll go through the relatively smaller projects on the front end. So the first project is the school bus refresh. That's listed as necessary. And that is, the request there is $650,000. What we try to do is every year retire the school buses that have the highest mileage or the greatest history of repair, and cycle those 5 or 6 buses out of the fleet and purchase 5 or 6 additional. And if at any time you guys want to stop me for questions, I'll be happy to pause.
Would you just share, do you know how old and how many miles are on buses that are in that range?
I don't have the exact figures, but I think in speaking with Valerie, I think we're somewhere in the 2008 range, and 300, 400,000 miles, somewhere in that ballpark of what we're hopefully getting rid of.
Understood. I appreciate it. Thank you.
The next project is listed as necessary, and listed as future need. It's the King George High School turf athletic field. This field is just over 60,000 square feet. So this year, as you all know, at King George High School, we have a turf field that's now about 10 years old. In the fall, Field Turf, which is the company that we contract with, sent their field care team to the site to survey and make recommendations for the care and the estimated longevity of the field. And the Field Turf suggested that we should probably get about 2 or 3 more years out of the turf, which is good. They originally estimated the turf to last about 10 to 12 years, and we're approaching that. So just to keep that on everybody's radar, 2 to 3 years down the road, that potentially would need to be replaced. The next project is King George Middle School baseball, softball scoreboard installation. The scoreboards for the baseball and softball field at the middle school were purchased through the construction renovation project of the middle school. However, the cost associated with the installation of these items were not included. So after getting an estimate and working with Mr. Clift, we estimate that the cost of installing the beams, the footers, and everything needed to hang the scoreboards would be $52,000. The next project is King George Elementary School gymnasium floor. That's reached the end of its life. If you've been to King George Elementary School and you've ever slid on that floor, you get up looking like a Smurf. So it's a blue material, and any level of friction on that will scrape off and create a lot of bluer jeans, and elbows and everything else. So that is in need of replacement. The estimated cost of that is $110,000, $110,285 to be more specific. Request 7, parking lots and driveways. The school board office, preschool, Potomac Elementary, and King George Elementary parking lots and driveways have various maintenance needs, including the repaving, striping, and sealing of those specific facilities. Right now, this cost is an estimated cost based on previous years of doing this work and working with Mr. Clift. Each facility is currently being assessed for a more definitive cost quote, which can be provided once we receive the vendor.
Dr. Boyd, I think Ms. Bender had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do specifically on Potomac. I thought that parking lot was repaired in the last couple of years, that it was repaved in some manner.
I think there was some potholes and things of that nature that were kind of band-aided, but I think there's some greater needs there. I was there this afternoon. There's some parking lots, particularly where they installed the new digital sign, that are in need of some help.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then King George, or excuse me, the flooring replacement at Potomac, Sealston, and King George Elementary Schools. The flooring at Potomac Elementary School, Sealston Elementary School, and King George High School are showing signs of wear and tear. Sealston Elementary School has 24 classrooms that need tile. $2,500 is the estimate per classroom, at a total of approximately $60,000. King George Elementary School has 9 classrooms that need tile as well. And Potomac Elementary School has 6 that are in need of tile. Also, the library, teacher's lounge, entrance for an approximation of $60,000. We've done some of this work over the past couple of years. This is in addition to the classrooms that have already been taken care of. And if there are any questions for any of those projects, I can certainly pause there.
Let's start from there, and then we'll move on to the last item.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Collins.
So there's $731,000 in carryover money from the schools. So if you took 4 through 7 and requested the carryover money, that'd be about $400,000. I think that'd be a good way to fund that if anybody has interest in it.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have any objection to seeing if we could come up with an agreement.
Certainly something we can entertain. Ms. Bender.
Yes, I have a question on Potomac, and I've been in there in the last year, and one of my concerns, I know it does need, especially in the hallways and the chorus room, it needs repair, but there is some water seepage,
yes.
and my concern is spending this money to make the repairs and not addressing the issue of the water seepage that probably has caused some of these issues.
I know that they're currently working on a lot of those water issues. There's some leaks in the ceilings. Potomac, as we all know, is an old building that has many different sections to it. I know even this year they were working on some spots. It's hard to find roof leaks in some of the seepage areas, but they continue to work on it. That's the best I can tell you at this point.
Yeah, my concern is just putting the money into it, and I know that school is unusual because it was built in 3 decades, and it has weird, seamlessness, kind of an unusual shape. So and one other question I had on the middle school. So I understand the baseball and softball, and I'll probably say it again because I've said it for years, that probably should have been included in the original and you know that, I've said that to you many times, that that should have been all part of the project. But another concern I have with those scoreboards, since we're going to repair those and possibly, you know, replace and install those, is the scoreboard inside the gym. That one is in pretty bad shape. And so it just to be equitable all sports, you would think that that one would need to be replaced too. Is that something you have on your radar?
Yeah, I appreciate that recommendation. So as soon as, well, now today was the last day of school, and I'm sitting down with Mr. Clift, and we're working on, really, I know we're responsible for providing a 5-year CIP to the Board of Supervisors. We're working on a 10, 15, 20-year plan that's going to include many of those other options. But like you said, that's a sooner than later. I know exactly what you mean as far as that scoreboard in the gymnasium.
Because it looks really bad. It's the one that was there when it was a high school, and the bottom part is falling down. It just looks bad when you have people coming to that. It's supposed to be your home court. But I'm very excited finally to see that you're going to have that 515 plan, because the other concern I have being out of the track is that center area around the track. That should have also been included in the track replacement, because there is actually sinkhole areas of that, and it's just in really bad shape. And surprised that football players haven't been injured, because it's really hard surface, and those sinkhole areas have been there for a long time. So I hope that's on that list.
I certainly hope, yes, it will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
So the middle of that field, they're not supposed to be playing football in the first place. That was part of the deal with the track. And the second thing is they were supposed to fix that when they did the track. So they might want to look back at that, because that was a part of the deal, is they fixed that inner field. So it didn't have sinkholes and it had proper drainage. That was a long, contentious battle with that. So if they didn't do what they were supposed to, then someone needs to hold them accountable for it.
Mr. Collins, to jump on that, then somebody needs to be, because that field is not in an appropriate, needs some TLC. Let's put it that
Certainly
way.
don't mind looking into it.
Dr. Boyd, I asked you earlier before the meeting, it was my understanding when I was on the school board that the athletic department had the money for the athletic field, that there was a fund. I was told 8 years straight there's a fund. So I just need to find out if there is a fund.
Understood. I'll look into it.
Thank you.
I will ask, so I appreciate your bringing up the idea of a 5, 10, 15-year plan. Obviously, the schools are our biggest expenditure. And so I'm going to ask, looking at next year, right now, you're estimating, let's pretend everything were to be approved. Only a request,
Right.
I know, but only a request for buses. Do you actually anticipate that's going to be accurate, or do you think there are going to be other things that you haven't been able to identify yet that will be requests for next year?
I believe there'll be others.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just in talking, even the scoreboard, I think there'll be others.
Okay. So I know this is, and I apologize, I'm going to ask my colleagues for just a little leeway on this. When do you think you might be able to craft something that might be a little more definitive in regards to like a 5-year plan, where we would really have an idea of, hey, I know 5 years down the road, this is something we really need to look at, so we can see it kind of bubble down?
I would say June, July timeframe, we
Okay.
can have something ready.
Okay.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
no problem at all.
Okay. All right. Did anyone else, I apologize, have any other questions about any of the school requests aside from the elementary or the preschool replacement at this time? Okay, I'm going to let you have
Okay.
that one.
All right, I appreciate it. So now, I'm excited to present that last year when I stood before you, we were talking about a feasibility study for the preschool. And you do have a handout at your workstation that is exactly that, the feasibility study for the preschool. So just to kind of walk through that a little bit, as Mr. Granger pointed out to me, and I think we all see now, it also says, and the addition of a 4th elementary school. So we know that in this process, and working with Mosley Architecture and taking a look at the enrollments and the capacity of our school buildings, I think we all agree at this point that it won't be long, given the growth in our community, that a 4th elementary school will be needed. So when speaking with Mosley, they were even milling around, and you'll see in some of this plan the idea of considering what a 4th elementary school would look like as far as this feasibility study for the preschool is concerned. So I'll just walk you through quickly what's in the feasibility study. I'll do it rather quickly. So if you work your way through, you'll see there's 4 sections. There's an introduction. There's existing conditions of the current preschool, which I won't go into deeply because we know that there's no desire right now to refurbish that existing preschool. The 3rd section is programming. So in other words, what is needed as far as instructional programming for the preschool. And then the 4th section or 4th tab in the feasibility study is options, and I can walk us through those relatively quickly. So if we work through the introduction, we worked with Mosley Architecture to conduct this feasibility study. The way this feasibility study worked was that they met with the existing staff at the preschool, myself, and also the teaching staff at the preschool. They toured the existing preschool facility. They visited the site of the decommissioned middle school to evaluate its potential as a possible site for a preschool. And then from there, they developed an architectural building program, which I'll walk through quickly. They developed conceptual plans. They developed possible site plans. We've talked about the 57-acre property that's over there behind the current middle school. And they developed conceptual planning budgets for each of those options. So again, I can, unless there's questions, I can skip through section 2 because speaking with many folks, we're in agreement that we don't need to do that.
Does anyone have any questions about section 2? Just in case. I agree. I don't think there's a need to belabor it. I think it's kind of understood it needs to be replaced. But
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So you can see a number of pictures there of the existing conditions. So if you turn to section 3 or tab 3, you'll see the programming guide, and what you'll see there is a continuation of a table. And what this involved was Mosley Architecture, along with some guidance they received from VDOE, and also some feedback they received from preschool administration and myself on the number of classrooms needed, the number of common spaces needed within that facility. And what they did was take those numbers and calculated the Virginia Department of Education standard square footage for those spaces, like a classroom, gymnasium, cafeteria, and so on. And what you'll see is a final programming need of about 45,000 square feet for the preschool. They took that classroom number, they took that number of common spaces, and then they worked it into different options. So I think the beef or the meat of this feasibility study is in that section 4. So if you turn to section 4, you'll first see 3 options for the building design. And you'll see the first 2 options are linear buildings. One is almost kind of a mirror image of the other, with all of the common spaces on one end of the building and the classrooms on the other end of the building. I won't spend much time talking about option 1 and 2. Option 3 was the option preferred by King George County Schools. And what you'll see there is an L-shaped building where you have all of your common space, your main office, your admin, all of those things towards the middle of the building. And as you work your way to the perimeter, similar to the design of the high school right now, you have your classroom or your academic wings. That also provides an opportunity for kind of a natural courtyard back behind the L-shaped building as well. So that was the preferred design. I can stop there for any questions.
I'm all the way to the back page.
Yes, sir.
Option 1 and 2,
Mhm.
and it's option 3, but there's no price tag for option 3.
I'll get you there. So it's a little confusing because they give you 3 options for the building, but then when you work through the site options, those are no longer the same 3 options. I'll walk you through it because it is a little bit confusing. If you turn the page though, after the 3 building options, what you'll see is the assessment that they did of the property. And I think as many of us know, there's a lot of limitations back in that property. The topography is pretty varied. There's a lot of wetlands back in that property. So taking into consideration those restraints, they came up with 2 locations really, and this is where the options come back into play. So this option 1, as far as the location of the building on the site. So again, to your question, Mr. Collins, they have chosen option 3 for the building here. And now when you're looking at option 1, and it's this page here, you'll see the preschool. that is sitting on the footprint of the existing middle school, or the old middle school, I should say. And then that purple line around is the property line. That's option 1 for where it would belong on the site. If you turn to the next page, you'll see option 2 of where the preschool could be put on that property. And just to walk you through it, if you're going down, I think that's 206 there, you take a right, and the preschool, there's a service road with a bus loop that goes all the way down the right-hand side of the property. And what they've done in this option is they've placed the potential for a 3rd elementary school on the footprint of the old middle school. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. And then if you turn to the last page, you see those 2 cost estimates for the 2 options that correspond with option 3 for the building and option 1 and option 2 for where they belong on the site or where they fit on the site. So option 1 takes the new the new preschool, the L-shaped building, and places it right on the footprint of the old middle school. Option 2 places the new preschool to the back right portion of the property if you're standing on the main road there, which would provide an option for a 4th middle school on the footprint of the old middle school in the future. And I can stop there for questions.
So what does the school board want?
I think we've talked about this, and I don't mind, David, if you want to mention anything as well, but we have considered, I think, most heavily option 2, that $27 million that provides that opportunity for that 4th elementary school, which again, given the fact that we're over capacity right now at Sealston and really approaching a capacity at King George Elementary School and Potomac Elementary School, it won't be long with the growth in our community that we will need a 4th elementary school.
Would the build out be at the same time or different years for the elementary and the preschool?
I think that's yet to be decided.
Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Boyd. So just to clarify, you just said that you're over capacity at Sealston and nearing capacity at King George Elementary School and Potomac Elementary School. Don't you already have trailers at both of those schools? So you kind of really are, for pure original building footprint, you really are over capacity already.
Yeah, Potomac, we're actually still looking at a modular. We took a modular out of there and we're looking to replace it because we know the growth there is coming. And King George Elementary School has trailers in it right now. King George Elementary School has a little more room, but relatively speaking, it's not much.
Okay, thank you.
If I could ask a clarification, the 27 million that's proposed is just for the preschool.
Just the preschool, correct.
Right. There have not been any numbers run for a 4th elementary.
Understood.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Thank you very much. So one question, because I've mentioned this before. Did you look at any option of placing the preschool with the elementary school right next to it with sort of like what we're doing with the courthouse, having it that in the future you could take a wall down and add on to it?
Mosley did not look at that option yet, but they have told me that they have built, in fact, our middle school currently has the option to build off of. So they have designs where we could do something similar.
And even if we did not do that, you also could share a playground. So there could be in the one option too, there could be a playground in between that could be shared, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say too that, this is a bit off topic, but if we could also in this, when and if we get down this road, no pun intended, if we could figure out how to potentially make a bus loop within that property, from the high school to the middle school to the preschool to the elementary school, I think it would create a good traffic situation for that 206 Route 3 congestion right now. Even today, I was telling Mr. Bush that the first day that the population at the schools was a lot lighter, you could tell the difference. And when schools are in session, that intersection right there is always severely backed up. So if we could figure out in this process how to kind of interconnect those schools with an inner property bus loop, I think it would serve the community well.
I was going to bring that up because I know there's enough land there to do so, because that is a big concern, especially those middle school. My daughter's on one of those buses that also has high school, and they have to go out and around, and it really doesn't make sense. And even for the kids that are at the middle school that do the high school JV, it would make sense. And then my last question is, with the elementary school, understanding that VDOT has many times said that the whole entrance would have to be redesigned because the building has been the site has been abandoned as a school site for a long time. Is that considered in here, that the whole main entrance would have to change, like the flow of the traffic?
So in the options, they have, and I believe this does satisfy that, they have some of the VDOT work in there in the options. You'll see right turn lane, left turn lane in the project itself, the project options. So I know that's certainly been a conversation for a number of different considerations.
All right, thank you.
I think Mr. Stats had a question.
Just one question. When are you going to, I know you were talking about a 5-year plan on when you were going to have that done. And I know there's that 10 to 15 year long plan. Do you have any idea when that will be done?
June, July.
Oh, so they'll be both around the same
We're
time.
going to sit down as soon as the celebration ceases and really take a look at building that plan out. In fact, I've got it on my calendar for early next week to sit down with our maintenance department and start building that plan out.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Collins?
So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, the sheds out here, the county is poor planning, and so is the trailers in the schools. So that's the reason they're there, is for poor planning. So we should never, ever have a trailer in this county. And there's been trailers for the last 30 years that I can remember, which means there's a planning problem. It's a statement, that's not a question.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with regards to the planning, I note in the study, you have 14 classrooms programmed in there. How many classrooms do you currently have?
I think that was modeled off of our existing facility. See if I can go down the hallway there. I don't know it off the top of my head. I want to say somewhere in the ballpark of 10. But again, that's only because I was at.
Could you just get that information to us and
Yes, ma'am.
just send it to Mr. Miller, and he can send it to the rest of us in
I certainly
the future?
can.
Thank you so much.
That would include Head Start as well, because I believe that's a little bit further down over.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions anyone has for Dr. Boyd in regards to the preschool proposal? Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
So on the planning commission, the preschool was rated at a 3. I think it should actually be 1 instead of a 3.
That's fair. Everyone will get an opportunity. Obviously, we'll vote on it. Right now, we're just kind of collecting the information about all the different requests, but certainly appreciate your stance.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add something. So Dr. Boyd and myself did meet with the Davenport folks back in March and got them looped in on the future plans for the preschool, and kind of talk through how you could do some financing. And my recommendation would be that we get Mr. Laux to come to another meeting, perhaps at the next, when you are ready to deal with your CIP and approving it and, signing off on it. Let him come in and talk about the possible ways of financing this preschool and whatever other
capital projects
aspects are related to the schools. We're pretty good, and set. Obviously, we don't have 27 million unless you do something. But I think that the Davenport folks have kind of an idea of a couple years out. I realize that time frame may not work, but I don't know what other resources unless you.
I would appreciate having
and I think that it would be worthwhile to let you guys see
about options. I think that information is obviously critical in order to make those decisions. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to move forward with this project, we have to figure out how to finance it. And so, when they're available, I would like to have them.
We'll make them available at your direction, whichever meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Miller, so you said that Davenport said that a couple years out for the preschool?
I think in conversations with Dr. Boyd, that was kind of that the market would be in a good place because of other commitments that the county has and the school has. And I think Dr. Boyd indicated that, you know, a 27, 28 fiscal year timeframe was acceptable, or at least you could deal with it. So that was the conversation. That's just for planning purposes. No one, obviously, I don't make decisions. I have to work through it and advise you all. So obviously we would want the Davenport people to help you, you know, deal with whatever financial decisions you have to make about this. So
having them come, I think, would be of a lot of value to the board to be able to make an informed decision. So,
But when they come, Mr. Granger,
Mhm.
they should know that, or I would think they would know that. So they're talking about a couple years down the road, or you're talking to them about a couple years down the road. That can's been kicked down the road far enough. It needs to be basically now. So not 27, 28.
so
They need to know that we want to do it sooner if that's the will of the board.
that's the will of the board. So we can work to figure that out.
right, and I think that if that was the will of the board, Mr. Collins, then they're going to go to work figuring out a way to make this work. But I think that, you know, when we were talking from a planning standpoint, those are the kind of the years that we were looking at. And so,
I do think it would be,
again, I don't make the decisions. I just assemble the information and help you.
as the board considers it, I think it would behoove them to be able to prepare a plan that would help us understand if we were to move forward immediately, what does that look like and what does that mean to the county?
Yes, sir.
That would help us to make an informed decision. So anyone else for anything for Dr. Boyd? Okay, thank you, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I know she's coming up, and that was what I wanted. To Davenport also have the new fire station in that plan. Okay.
So that is already factored into the operating budget and the capital budget. So that money was set aside last year
As part of the,
carried forward this year. Yes, sir.
For the planning, but not for the building.
No, for the building.
as part of with the courthouse.
When you did the tax level that you did last year, it included enough money to build the new fire station, to fund that. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Miller. Chief Moody wasn't able to be with us this evening, so he asked that I come and present our CIP requests. Currently, King George County has a fleet of 7 ambulances. We operate these ambulances 24 hours a day, approximately 4,000 calls for service a year. And as you know, that call volume is continuing to go up. Each of these ambulances averages approximately 25,000 miles per year as far as mileage. And we do our best to rotate those out every 7 years. So currently we are requesting funding for our replacement ambulance. The best estimate that we have currently is $350,000 for the cost of the unit alone without additional equipment. There would be no additional operating expenditures for that unit. It would be a replacement unit for an ambulance that we currently have. The current build time on an ambulance is approximately 2 to 3 years from the time the contract is signed. So our first request is for $350,000 for ambulance replacement. Any questions on that?
So you said the best estimate right now is 350,000. Do you recall the amount that the most recent one that we purchased was?
I do not.
Okay.
I can find that information out and get it to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
It was approximately 320. I believe we had set aside 285,000 in last year's CIP.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got ready to do the contract, we had to come back and asked for an additional 30 to 40,000, if I remember correctly.
I do remember the request. I couldn't remember the amount though, but I appreciate that. So it's probably good to plan because everything does seem to be inflating. So I appreciate that as well. So did anyone else have any questions about the ambulance? Mr. Stono.
Chief Simmons, thank you for coming out. The equipment that's in the ones that are going to be retired, is that interchangeable? So that's all going to go into the new units?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
I think we're good on the ambulance. I'm assuming you'll probably want to speak to the fire and rescue facility.
Okay, our second request for funding is going to be for 14 million for the design and construction of the new company 2 in Dahlgren. As you're aware, we recently entered into a purchase agreement for a piece of property off of the 301 corridor. Currently, fire rescue operations are being run out of 2 different buildings, out of Company 2 and Rescue Station 2. I don't want to spend a lot of time on justifying why we need an additional fire station. I think you guys have been beat to death with that. Suffice it to say, we've well outgrown the facility that we're currently in. It wasn't intended for personnel operating 24 hours a day. Both buildings are requiring a significant amount of maintenance. Our new Company 2 would consist of 4 apparatus bays along with bunk rooms for male and females, fitness room, kitchen, day room, and there would be some shared space for the sheriff's office to do some work in the Dahlgren area. This funding request is to continue moving forward with the process for the property that we just entered into the agreement for.
So the current facility, as those buildings deteriorate, is there a plan that the fire and rescue department has for use for those facilities, like for using it for maintenance or anything along those lines, or is the fire and rescue department looking to leave those buildings completely?
They're looking at leaving those buildings completely.
Okay.
Aren't they owned by the volunteers?
Right.
That's correct.
And
Spender?
yes, and one of the buildings in particular, if I remember my history correctly, is if we vacate it, we have to give it back to the person who donated it, correct?
I believe yes. There is no further expansion that can be done on any of those buildings because of the wetlands. So there really isn't any way, and it's not feasible to try and add additional square footage to those buildings.
Anyone else have any further questions about the new fire and rescue facility request? Mr. Stats?
So I see in 23, 24, it's $14 million, and then the next 3 years, it's nothing. Is there a reason why it's not spread out? That payment's not spread out?
So the financing of it is in 1 year, and the construction would, obviously you make your financial action to take care of it in the 1 year. The project may last a year and a half, but you're going to expense it in that year. And then the next one that's on the list is the 10 million, and that's a placeholder for what's going to be the Shiloh station. So, and that's how the fire department, specifically Chief Moody, has kind of planned this out. But that's what you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
And our third and final funding request is for fiscal year 25-26. We're requesting $2 million for the purchase of an aerial ladder truck. Ladder trucks are used for victim rescue, fire suppression with master stream operations, ventilation, a broad array of different uses for a ladder truck. Currently, there are multiple buildings in King George that would require the use of a ladder truck for victim rescue. We rely heavily on our mutual aid partners from NDW and surrounding jurisdictions for ladder truck. We currently carry 24-foot ground ladders, extension ladders, and that would get us to a typical 2-story residential window. So we are requesting funding for the ladder truck. The reason that the funding is pushed to the 25-26 fiscal year is because once we sign the contract, it takes approximately 3 years for the build of that truck. Again, this is an estimate on this pricing. Chief Moody has been watching the pricing on this apparatus, and there's been a consistent increase. Approximately every 3 months, the price is continuing to go up. So this is a best estimate that we can give you. So the request is for $2 million at this time for a placeholder.
Do we have any questions about the ladder truck request? Sir?
So just out of curiosity, I've heard about the work that you're trying to do on the Dalvin station. For this truck, where would it be housed? And are you planning in the build of the current firehouses to be able to store it there?
Yes, sir. It would, one of the 4 bays would be earmarked for the ladder truck.
Okay, so at the Dalvin station?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Solid waste and recycling.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. Beginning in fiscal 22, our department received additional maintenance responsibilities as a result of the 17th Amendment to the host agreement. One of these responsibilities is to maintain the infrastructure of the county's convenience centers. The concrete pad of the metal disposal area at the Sealston Convenience Center is deteriorated to the point that reinforcement bar is showing it must be periodically removed. We have to cut it out and grind it down to prevent punctures of patrons' tires. Portions of the surrounding wall have also broken off, and one section at the end is cracked and unstable. If you look there at that concrete pad, that lattice work you see is where the top layer of the concrete has been stripped off over the years, and that is the rebar that is showing. And also you have the puddles that are holding water. That's just another front end shot. You can see a couple pieces there, one of which was actually cut out already. We're gonna have a better wall shot coming up, but you can see that chunks of the wall have been taken out over the years. The area of the pad most in need of repair is that front section. It's approximately 70 feet by 25 feet. The concrete depth is estimated in the center at 1 foot. Now at the end, there's an 18-inch turn down. So at the end, it's kind of keyed down to give additional stability. The amount of demo material is estimated at 70 yards. The existing subgrade will have to be, so when it's cut out, the existing subgrade will have to be graded. And after compaction, 1/2 inch rebar will be installed 16 inches on center, on top and bottom. Then we're gonna use a 4,000 PSI concrete to a 1 foot thickness. That 18-inch turn down is, from what we've seen, is a bit overkill. Control joints installed to code and a heavy brum finish applied. Estimated cure on it is about a month. The walls are 8 inches thick. The damaged wall sections, we're looking just to cut them down 18 inches, repin them, form them, and pour them. There's 8 sections of wall that require repair, and 1 6-foot by 3-foot corner that's just going to be saw cut at a 45-degree angle and removed altogether. That's the back wall. That terrible stencil is actually just painted over, and that's being done, redone. That's looking down the wall. You can see rebar popping up through there. So 18 inches would be cut down on those sections, formed and poured. That's the side. I don't know if you can see it at the very end. You've got a crack that's roughly running 45 degrees. We would just saw cut that, knock it over and pull it out as part of the demo. The concrete and the contractor will demo and place the old concrete in an on-site dumpster. We'll haul it, we'll dump it. Now, in partnership with Waste Management, their on-site dirt work contractor, Ryan, gave us a time and materials quote. Since they already do a lot of work for Waste Management, they have their equipment on site. There's an economy of scale and proximity. Now, just for interest's sake, we got additional estimates. They didn't come in until March, and those projected costs were higher, both approximately 125,000. But our hope is to use the time. It'll obviously go up for bid, but the T&M quote is what we're looking for from Ryan Central, who's already on site. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Newchuk? Mr. Collins?
So the landfill committee had recommended this expenditure.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Bender? Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Excellent.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much. Yes, sir.
General Properties.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and everyone else. The first item I've got are asking funds for is the replacement roof for the Ralph Bunch shop. We've repaired this roof several times. It's a rubber membrane that's become brittle. I've had contractors and along with General Properties. Like I said, at this point, it needs to be replaced. We've got some structural damage to the sheathing and some of the rafters also now. So,
Any questions about the roof?
all right. Second is the engineering cost for the new General Properties building. We didn't include this in the first part, when we asked the monies to do the building. Right now, we've got Wiley Wilson doing a needs assessment with engineering and General Properties, and we met with them 3 times so far. 1 on site, 2 virtually. They've given us a preliminary plan, which engineering and myself looked over, met with them Thursday. We picked an option that best fits the site with less grading. They're supposed to get back to us either middle or end of June with a plan, to move forward and a pretty close cost. So, of what this whole project will end up costing us.
Go ahead, Ms. Bender.
I have a question so the General Properties building is just to relocate all the places that it's located. But one thing I've mentioned, especially Mr. Miller, is we have a lot of our supplies and extra stuff in many different buildings.
Correct. And they've set aside
apart for that?
Yes.
So that it could all be in a nice climate controlled or in one place.
This doesn't include the price of that storage building, but there is a place on the site for it.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Muncy, for joining us this evening. In looking ahead, so your slide looks very much like the county engineer slide coming up next. So I don't know if that's a mistake or it's a duplicate, or is it just these are the true costs, or is it this plus this? Okay, so you're not asking for 150,000 plus 150,000 and 125,000 plus 125,000. It's just this one.
No,
okay.
Just the one.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The first project I've come to you today with is the old courthouse renovation and repurposing.
So just so that everyone know that what's up there shown right now is incorrect information. So
Yes, and
we have it on the capital improvements, the big Excel sheet, if you have that. For those who have it, I know not everyone does. Okay. So
You should just get rid of basic.
that, yes, it's bad data. So I apologize for interrupting, but I just want to make sure that when you're speaking to it, that there's try to reduce confusion. So.
I'll go ahead and keep going. All right. Well, the first project I'm bringing to you is the old courthouse renovation and repurposing. As many of you know, the new courthouse is currently under construction and due to be completed in May of 24. The county administration building has no additional available office space, and several departments have been relocated to rental office space. The county is currently in the process of performing a needs assessment for the existing, I'm sorry, I'm lost track here. The county is currently in the process of performing an assessment of the existing courthouse to include the needs assessment of the departments that may be relocated to the old courthouse upon completion of the renovation. The purpose of this request is to provide funding for the preparation of construction and bid documents relevant to the old courthouse. To clarify, this is the engineering to the point of construction and bid documents. The amount of that is $550,000.
Ms. Bender?
This is one I've been asking for a while. So first of all, are we going to be getting the report soon?
Yes, Mr. Cusenberry was reaching out to the Mosley folks on their presentation, and we may be able to get them on this next one. If not, then we'll have it. We can get it on the meeting in the 20th.
Thank you. And then my last thing is in that was 550, right?
Correct.
Is that include finally taking care of the mold issue in the building, not just a Band-Aid?
It will include the engineering portion and the planning and such, and planning for the remediation of the mold.
All right, thank you.
So while it's not shown here, there would be another request probably in the following year to do the work, which will be some number of dollars.
Correct.
That's going to be more than probably this request for the engineering work.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Collins?
Why is it so $500,000 for engineering? Why is that so costly?
A project of this scale, it's the cost of what we were facing.
What do you get for 500,000? That you're going to take out walls and you're going to remediate mold and you're going to work on the HVA system for 500,000? They're going to tell you that and give you a plan, or what do they give you for 500,000?
What you just mentioned in a form that is biddable. Bid documents spec'd out to the point that you can get accurate prices, accurate and consistent prices.
So are they a single source for that engineering?
I believe this cost of engineering is a estimate from the engineering department on what it will cost based on
From your department or from Wiley Wilson?
from our department.
Right, and so I think that if I understand the way they've done this is they're saying it's like roughly about 10% of what your total build out could be if you do the right thing over there, and then you do some things with the middle school, and all these things that are part of that package could run up as high as $5 million. I mean, now of course, we're going to present the plan to you, and you're going to, kind of figure out how you want to go on that. May even form a committee like they did with the new courthouse. And so those costs could change, but I think that what Mr. Cusenberry and what Mr. Young are trying to do is just get a placeholder in there for engineering related work. And what the standard is roughly 10% of a total project is set aside for the engineering work.
So you're telling me it's not just the engineering for the courthouse, it's for the old middle school, all that stuff?
It's this building and the old court, the existing courthouse.
You mean
Not the middle school.
you're saying River?
This building, the River Comb, and the building just across the street. That's what this would be for. That's what they've been looking at, is options here along with options over there. And I think, when they come and make their presentation, you'll see, there's several ways you could do some things. You're going to have a lot of space over there that you can reconvert into possible offices for constitutional officers or for departments. So, there's options that we've looked at. When that happens, then you can open up options here for expansion of departments or reassignment of people and things like that. That's what we asked them to do.
I understand that. I'm not that dense. I can.
No, I wasn't implying that.
What I'm asking is $500,000 is a lot of money for engineering to tell you how you can form these buildings for the next workforce.
I have to trust what my county engineer, Mr. Cusenberry, and what Mr. Young are proposing. That, so,
I hope we don't pay $500,000 for that work.
Does anyone else have any other questions? All right.
All right, on to the next project. Next project is the King George Middle School Turn Lane, Phase 2. And the expansion of the King George Middle School was completed. Associated with the project is the construction of a turn lane off Dahlgren Road into the school as required by VDOT as part of the approval for that project. The county received a 50% revenue sharing matching grant from VDOT to fund the first phase of the turn lane project. The county will be awarded another revenue sharing to provide 50% funding for the second phase, which consists of pavement widening on the west side of Dahlgren. And that, as you can see, is $500,000. That's broken down with $60,000 in engineering cost and $440,000 is estimated construction cost.
And that's the total cost. So the 50% would be 250. So obviously you're capturing both what the cost is from the revenue stream of the county providing as well as the revenue share, right?
To the best of my knowledge, that is half of the cost. Is that?
So I think that the total cost, Mr. Granger, is like $1 million.
Yes.
And our portion of this is 500,000. So this has been a placeholder since I got here, and maybe a year before that. I know that Mr. Cusenberry was working with VDOT on that.
Okay.
But this was a set aside that we have to have, and we've been budgeting it in the long term, and now it's coming up.
Okay. The only reason I ask that is because normally when there is a request and there is grant funding or some kind of revenue that's coming in as well, we budget, like for instance, the law enforcement patrol boat shows a total. It's going to cost $280,000 to purchase is the estimate, but 33% of that would be covered by the county is the idea. So just to try to avoid confusion in the future, if we could have it show the total amount that's going to cost for the project.
All right.
And we can make a change on the next one, to present for you all.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Did anyone else have any? I apologize. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank y'all.
Parks and Rec.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the advisory committee. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to present the capital improvement plan for Parks and Recreation for fiscal years 2024 through 2028. The Department of Parks and Recreation has been blessed over the past 4 years to receive funding for a number of capital improvements through both the traditional CIP process as well as federal government programs like the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan. To date, we've completed all of the fiscal year 2021 CARES Act improvements, a number of the FY22 approved safety and security upgrades, and acquired all of the fiscal year 23 capital equipment upgrades. Not all have been installed yet. The Citadel Brooks Junior Park Picnic Shelter is open and available for use, and we get calls every day to rent it. And the tennis center reconstruction will be completed in the coming weeks. I actually exchanged emails with the contractor today. The sports field lighting projects and the restrooms for Citadel Brooks Junior Park will go to bid later this calendar year. Mr. Miller covered the general county process, but for Parks and Recreation, our process actually began last May with our needs assessment. We use that needs assessment to develop our new list of projects. Those projects are then approved by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and then we're submitted with our annual budget. Just a reminder of the top 10 facility needs from the needs assessment last year. The 8 items loaded in red are ones that can be addressed through this capital improvement plan. Our first project is implementation of the Trailway Study. We'll have impacts across the county as we do it. Earlier this year, the board approved the King George County Courthouse Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, which lays out specific strategies to improve multimodal transportation along Kings Highway from Inaugural Drive to the YMCA. Within that plan, there are 4 distinct phases, and we intend to seek VDOT funding for the individual portions starting with Madison Drive to Dahlgren Road. The plan is to submit a transportation alternatives grant, a program grant this spring, and also in the future request smart scale funding. And all those programs, though, require matching funds, and so the goal of this item is to set aside money each year for the next 5 years so that when we are awarded a grant, we don't come back with a urgent message and say we need $400,000 and we have to find it today, that it will be sitting essentially in a savings account for us. For Sealston Sports Complex, we again seek funding for a playground to be added near the picnic shelter. Playgrounds were our second highest need in the 2022 needs assessment, and Sealston is our only major park without one. This necessary project seeks $125,000 for equipment and construction. Staff is also prepared to apply for grant opportunities in order to decrease the burden on the county. While the playground at Sealston is deemed necessary, the replacement of the 23-year-old playground at Barnesfield Park is urgent. Installed in the fall of 2000, the playground at Barnesfield has far exceeded its useful life of 15 to 20 years, and it's undergone 2 major repairs in the last 3 years, totaling $11,000. In order to protect the children that play on the equipment, as well as to decrease the county's potential liability, we seek the same $125,000 for new equipment and installation. And again, staff is prepared to seek grant funding to help with that cost. As we all know, the Harry Nice Thomas Mack Middleton Bridge is complete and open, and the public is eagerly awaiting the reopening of Wayside Park and the development of the additional lands the county acquired. It is urgent that we begin planning the planning process this fiscal year by contracting with a planning and design firm so that renovations and new amenities can be started as soon as possible. Parks and Recreation Department and the Advisory Committee both believe that we need a solid big picture plan for all 330 plus acres of all 4 properties. This is a multi-year request with $100,000 in planning funds for this fiscal year. As the board has briefly discussed, in prior meetings, there's also a need for funding outside of the CIP process in order to restore and add parking areas as well as basic amenities to Wayside Park as soon as possible. I met with staff from the Maryland Department of Transportation and Skanska Corman McLean this morning about items that they will be able to assist with, including replacement of some picnic tables, birdhouses that were taken down during construction. They plan to still utilize that access road into the park through September, so we will not be able to open the park until they're finished. As King George County continues to grow in population, our need for a centralized recreation center grows as well. Currently, Parks and Recreation utilizes 9 different facilities for indoor activities. During the winter, we may have up to 7 of these facilities in use at the same time, making supervision a challenge. It is our desire to begin strategic planning and design of a recreation center in FY27 and begin construction in FY28. The construction figure of $10 million is an estimated placeholder at this time. I'd like to also emphasize the need for Parks and Recreation to be able to work closely with King George County Schools as each of us plan new facilities. Until a comprehensive recreation center exists, and most likely even after one is built, recreation activities will continue to take place in the schools during non-instructional periods. We need to ensure that gymnasiums, storage rooms, offices, and other spaces are sufficient to serve both the schools and the Parks and Recreation Department. While our furry friends did not make the top 10 in 2022, both staff and the advisory committee recognize that there is a need for an off-leash dog park in King George County. Our citizens must drive either to Colonial Beach or Stafford County to run their dogs legally off-leash, or they violate park rules by doing so in one of our facilities. Unfortunately, this violation of park rules ends with dog waste being left on our sports field all too often. An enclosed baseball field is not and should not be used as an off-leash area, but King George Little League and our travel baseball and softball teams consistently find dog waste on the fields. This is an FY25 recommendation. Constructing field lights on Barnes Fields B and C will enhance our ability to host sports tourism events, specifically softball and baseball tournaments. Since we also are requesting master planning for this park, we have pushed this necessary addition back to fiscal year 26. Sports tourism opportunities also exist at Sealston, our most popular set of fields for travel, baseball, and softball. In FY26, we would like to add the lighting to softball fields 2 and 3 at a cost of $700,000. Another fiscal year 26 need will be to repave the parking lot at Sidell Brooks Jr. Park. At that time, it is anticipated that the decommissioning of the Perkins Corner wastewater plant will be complete, and the heavy trucks that enter the park to access the plant will no longer be needed, and the continued damage to the surface will be eliminated. We anticipate this being a $750,000 project. Finally, we have the most urgent request that I have ever brought through the capital improvement process, and it's tough for Parks and Recreation to really have something that stands out as urgent. The access road into Sealston Sports Complex was designed strictly for park use with 2 inches of asphalt. Since the pandemic, this roadway has become the staging area each day for parents picking up their children at Sealston Elementary. In addition, school buses use the road to turn around or wait and park, and they wait in the park until dismissal. Just the other day, I was up there, bus was in our gravel lot next to the concession stand, hanging out, reading her book because she was adjacent to the bathrooms, and then as the end of school came, she drove back up the road. This increased traffic, possibly as high as 300 additional trips a day, has led to alligator cracking throughout the entire roadway. And there are also 2 large potholes that I'm sure all of you have avoided. And we have attempted to fix them with cold patch on multiple occasions with little success. For fiscal year 24, we asked for $150,000 to repair and improve this roadway with a total depth of 5 inches of asphalt. I want to again thank the members of the Board of Supervisors for their continued support of Parks and Recreation. Your help in allowing us to improve our community with additions like the Sidell Brooks Park picnic shelter are appreciated by many. In closing, while education and public safety are often seen as essentials of a community, Parks and Recreation stands closely behind as part of what makes a community great. The National Recreation and Parks Association reported in 2021 that, quote, 4 in 5 U.S. adults indicate access to high-quality parks and recreation is an important factor in when choosing a place to live, end quote. Through our capital improvement plan, we hope to continue to meet and exceed those expectations for our residents of King George County.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Bender?
I don't have a question, but could you send the presentation?
I'll be happy.
Lots of good information. Thank you.
I'll forward it to Mr. Miller, and he'll send it on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clark. I believe we have our last department presentation, Mr. Dines.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and our Citizens Committee. It's good to be here again. I only have 3 items in my CIP. The first one is our normal one for our 5-year computer replacement program for the offices that will need to have their upgrades and their warranty carried forward for a new warranty for their new computers. That will come in at $70,000 this year, this next coming year, and $70,000 the following year in 24, and down to 50 for the last three, 25, 26, 27. Any questions?
I think we're good, Mr. Dance. You can carry on.
All right. Second one is for our courthouse network equipment with the 55,000 square foot building. We will need more equipment once that building is built. And so I put a placeholder there for the things we may need, such as more switches, bigger firewall appliance to handle the many new technologies that will be introduced in that building, and the number of people that will be accessing through wireless access points they will have. They have cameras, security cameras, and of course the door locks, many doors, and the sheriff's office portion where they will be doing monitoring security 24/7. So that one comes in $100,000 that first year, and I put up another 50 for the year after, just in case there's something else we need. We will be taking some of our equipment that we currently have at the courthouse there, but we want to make sure that we have what we need for that expansion of space. Any questions? Okay. The last one is for the recabling of this building and the Parks and Rec. Now, I know you probably remember Ms. Bender might, and Ms. Kupka definitely, and Mr. Granger too. I think you're on the board. When I first introduced this, it was before COVID. Then when COVID came, of course, no one would come out to the building because of the implications of that disease. So we put it off, and the main reason was we needed it was because of the leaking in the roof in that room, which is the DMARC for this building. So thankfully, Mike Muncie and his general properties team fixed that leak. So the more important part of this project is actually Parks and Rec, because they're in dire need of moving where they have their DMARC in a closet with no circulation, and then getting new cabling in their building and being able to house more of their people that they have kind of stretched out in old connections and old cables. So we wanted to clear that out. So I had $160,000 for that project, but I don't see the need for the admin building so quickly compared to the Parks and Rec. So I probably pushed the admin building out because we're going to be very, very busy in this building the next year with our new financial system. We're going to be having trainings. So we'll have to work around a lot of work and work in the evenings and things to get all that done. I don't know if we can do everything at once. Donna knows how what we have in store for us. So, but I think the more important one is the Parks and Rec. And like I said, but there'll be $160,000. It'll probably be a little less, but I don't know how much the cabling costs have gone up since. When I first did this, it was $35,000 for the Parks and Rec, and it was $85,000 for this building. But of course, that was 3.5, 4 years ago. So I kind of put a little extrapolated out to what the economy is today. Are there any questions?
So I'm going to circle back. I'm just going to ask computer replacement. How many computers are you looking to replace?
That will cover 40 to 45. Once we get such big numbers, you can really get good deals for that amount.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions about any of Mr. Dine's requests? Okay, thank you, Mr. Dines.
Thank you.
Think we come back to you, Mr. Miller, about possible funding sources?
I'm going to let Ms. Hahn give you an overview of that, but
So we included this in here. This is from our audit that we had at the end of last fiscal year, and their projected estimates of what the fund balance would be, as well as the capital fund balance. As you know, that we're going to be taking close to, but not quite 2 million out of the general fund balance to balance our operating budget this year. So that number would come down by about 2 million on the top line. But the bottom part of this is the projected amount of funding that's left in the capital projects that is available for use. So the potential funding sources for our capital projects, we put $2,430,000 into the operating budget for fiscal year 24. $430,000 that is set aside for the fire station, the financing for the fire station. We still have about $500,000 left in that gas line that had been originally $4 million, and we've used it over the years. Some before I got here, some after. The school bus replacement, they had $66,144 left from last year's appropriation. So that would lower the $650,000 request by that amount. There are other miscellaneous projects that are complete, and there's small buckets of money left over, totaling about $160,000. There's $500,000 left from the Fairview Beach stabilization project. The EMS fire stations, once we combined everything, if you remember when we were getting ready to do the financing or purchase the land, we combined those. So those altogether is $741,042. $400,000 of that has already been encumbered with the design services. So there's a little bit of money left over to go towards other things, but I'm sure that the design services, the price tag is going to be going up on that because that started many years ago. And then the middle school expansion interest, and this can only be used for school projects. So some of the projects that Dr. Boyd was talking about earlier, like scoreboards, those kind of things, we can use this money for those projects. Like he said, the scoreboards, they bought them with the project, but they didn't have the install in there. The interest that we earned on that could be used for those projects. And then we still have, that has been set aside in past fiscal years that didn't get touched, 2.9 million in the capital projects fund right now. And then of course fund balance, but I don't know that y'all want that it would be your desire to touch that right now. Then if there's any surplus, which we won't know until year-end audit, and the art funds are dwindling down. We currently have a remaining balance of $424,000, but $150,000 of that had been set aside for that second payment to the broadband project. And so that leaves $336,424 in the art funds that have not been committed or set aside. And then at this time, I will let you all take over and have any discussion and give us direction as to how you want us to proceed, what your desires are to put in this plan.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. First, I'll ask if anyone has any questions about what Ms. Hahn had briefed about funding sources. Okay, then I will bring it back. Obviously, we can have a discussion to discuss these requests that have been presented to this evening. I know in the past we have also had each board member provide a ranking or a list of which items they would like to see funded, and then it's just a tabulation at that point, and we can then continue to have a discussion past that as well.
So would you like for me to take the, take the spreadsheet and add a column and send that to you all like I did last year?
I would appreciate that, yes. I think that would be helpful. I don't mind if there's any particular projects that anyone would like to speak about this evening to discuss in particular. We can do that right now. I do know how you feel about the preschool, Mr. Collins, and I appreciate that. So if you want to discuss that further, we certainly can. And
Mr. Granger, we'll try to have it ready for you at your joint meeting with the Planning Commission to hand out, and then email you all individual copies as well. But we'll have the physical copy with you.
Okay.
On that night. What Ms. Hahn was talking about.
Understood. Thank you. Ms. Cup.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I actually, since we have the benefit of having the commissioner and her deputy here this evening, I wondered if anyone else wished to support the $75,000 request, the one time, or dividing it over the course of 3 years, $25,000 per year, and then with the knowledge of the operating costs of $25,000 per year. I fully support that. I think it is necessary, urgent. We had so much feedback from citizens after the last reassessment. And one of the biggest things we heard over and over again, and we even had someone provide public comment multiple times and speak to you and speak to me, and was that there's a feeling that the process isn't transparent and that citizens shouldn't have to visit the office to get their data, to get their information about their property, that it should be more accessible to them. It was even to the point where there was a wish to have the field sheets mailed out. And as Ms. Hart stated, that would be at a significant expense, both in money and staff time. So I really feel strongly that I think that request is reasonable given everything we went through in the last reassessment, to both promote transparency and just easy access to the citizens about the valuation of the property that they own, that they're paying taxes on to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cuphead. Ms. Bender, I think you had something you want to.
Yes, thank you. I would like to echo that. And definitely, as we have Ms. Southall now, is once we get that in place, we could do a big marketing campaign to tell people where to be able to find their field sheets, because I had many people reaching out to me last year going, how do I know what my property is of value, including myself? So I think if it's something the citizens can see that's actually going to benefit them, they can go online and find that information very easily. I think not only for the citizens, but for your staff would be immeasurable to help out.
Mr. Collins, did you want to weigh in?
I was just curious if these field sheets, you not only get them for yourself, your own properties, but can you access anybody else's property?
Yes, you can. Real estate is public information.
And you were saying it would be accessed through GIS. It would link to the GIS system? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Mr. Stonehill.
I wasn't sure if Mr. Stonehill. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Cuphead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Commissioner Hart, would you be able to provide us with localities that are already using this system, and we could just a list of 3 or 4 that you know are already using this, that we could visit their websites ourselves, click on whatever we have to click on to figure out what this looks like, and so that way we have a better idea of what you're talking about for your request? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Mr. Stats, I think you had something.
Just on a different project on here, something, I'm part of the Landfill Advisory Committee. Something I've heard from multiple people is the Sealston Convenience Center repair, and making sure that we fix that quite urgently, because it is damaging people's tires. And I've heard a couple people complain about it. So just passing that forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stats. To circle back, I'm also in favor of the Commissioner Revenue's request. I think this is of a lot of value to the citizens overall. So I think the return on investment for that cost is very reasonable. So, Mr. Call.
Could we take that out of the ARPA fund?
So once you all determine which one projects after we do the ranking and everything, then we come back with a funding solution for the projects, and then at a subsequent board meeting, we bring forward to you all of the projects that you approved and the funding to get it allocated. This process.
Correct. That is.
But if you want to
usually
move,
process.
I mean,
Is that something that if we want to move forward with using the, I think Mr. Collins was just asking if that could that be the revenue source if we chose to go that route?
yes, it could be.
So it sounds like we want to move forward tonight on that. So that's why I wanted to pull it out of that fund.
So what I'm hearing, you would like that to be almost like taken off of the CIP and just an action item tonight and then funded.
So
the ARPA money.
The only thing I'm going to ask from a legal perspective is that we normally have to hold a public hearing in order to before we vote on our CIP. So is there
The
a challenge
Planning
with that?
Commission already held the public hearing.
Don't we hold-
We normally don't, the Board of Supervisors does not hold a public hearing on CIP. That is held by the Planning Commission.
Okay. I apologize. I just misremember. Apologies for that.
So, Mr. Chair, just so we're clear, am I correct, though? We could do the $75,000 one-time request from ARPA, but the ongoing $25,000 per year operational request, we cannot use ARPA for ongoing.
That's correct.
contracts like that.
So in subsequent years, not in the next fiscal year, but the one after that and go forward would be in her operating budget.
Gotcha.
Understood. So I'll ask my colleagues, there has been a request from Mr. Collins. Would you be willing to entertain moving forward tonight on this project in particular and using the ARP funding line?
I have no problem with that. I think the citizens would really appreciate it, especially being able to see their information.
If our citizens want to weigh in on it in particular? Okay. If the board has the will to, then obviously someone can make a motion. So I will entertain one if someone would like to make one.
I will make a motion to fund, and please correct me if I'm not doing the motion correctly, to fund the Vision CAMA program now using 75,000 using ARPA funds as a one-time.
Yes, to move the 75,000 from the ARP project line to a line, jail line that will be created for the ARP Vision CAMA program.
Thank you, exactly as Ms. Hahn said.
All right. We have a motion, probably a second. Thank you, Ms. Hahn, for the clarification. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. And so I'm going to, obviously, I'm sure you guys will remove that then from the request for this current CIP.
We will remove it from this.
Okay.
And
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
So how does the board feel in regards to my earlier suggestion about the carryover for the schools for some of their capital projects?
Ms. Hahn, how much do they have as carryover?
So right now, you don't know how much they're going to have as carryover because the fiscal year isn't over yet. And I wish I'd brought it down here. I could tell you where they're at right now. I have it upstairs, but I don't have it with me on their operating budget.
And one of the things that we were talking about with Davenport, and again, I think it would, bear them coming and presenting, but was the idea that if you have this annual carryover that comes back to the general fund, is that something that you could set aside and dedicate? I know it's a fluctuating number, but if you set like a floor amount, 500,000 or whatever it is, and you could then begin to build a fund to help offset any of these future costs for like the preschool. And that's what we did talk about. And I could have, Mr. Lau from Davenport could probably explain that a little better, but their feeling is that there's, this county doesn't really, unfortunately, qualify for a lot of these school funding capital things that other counties are because of the nature of our demographics. But it's one of those things that they had talked about, that's one way you could start carving it down 2 million or whatever. I know that's not, when you have 27 million, that's not a large reduction, but it could help. And so that was one of the things, and it's kind of dovetailing on what Ms. Collins is saying, is that you utilize that funding for something instead of just having it come back to the general fund.
I mean, as long as they can do it and it's, it's legal, that would also probably help them stop wasting, or burning their money at the end of the year. I mean, that would go a lot of our departments, not just the school. I mean, if there was a way to hold that money aside, maybe they can say, hey, geez, we can use this for next year's project as opposed to all these other stuff.
Well, I can assure you that my pen that I'm signing from this point on until the end of the year, the fiscal year, is dedicated to the schools. And your county departments aren't the ones that are necessarily doing that at the end of the year. It is the schools. And so I do agree with you that there needs to be a little bit more balance on that.
So I guess what I was mentioning was some of these specific earmarked projects. So we wouldn't be into that game, Mr. Stonehill. But the paving of this and fixing of that. So we know exactly where it's going, and it's not, buying 1,000 shirts or something,
Understood. So I'll say I'm willing to entertain it. I'm not willing to move forward tonight with using that as the funding source for those 4 projects, but I'm certainly willing to entertain looking at that as we continue the CIP process. But I'll let my colleagues weigh in as well.
Mr. Chair, I don't disagree with what you're proposing, but I would rather wait and see staff's funding solution, because that's going to also incorporate some of the prior capital fund project appropriations, the school bus at 66,000, the middle school expansion interest at 400,000. I'd rather kind of just see what that looks like, what staff brings us as far as that goes, without moving forward tonight.
I would also like to see, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Boyd, I know has already left, but I would like to ask him about, have they thought about that for what their end of year funds are? Because maybe they could also include other things like the gym scoreboard being replaced with that kind of money. And they might already have thoughts of that and are going to use some of their carryover funds for that. So having him here so we could ask him questions might be a good.
One thing to consider there is that they would need to come before you and ask to move the funds from one major category to the other to cover some of those kind of things.
Okay. I'm going to circle back to the school preschool replacement. I know that's a big item. I agree with Mr. Collins. I think this is something that is urgently needed and has been urgently needed for a long time. Obviously, I'm certainly not asking for us to approve and fund it tonight, but I'm looking to, I guess, kind of pull my colleagues to see where you stand on this request, and reaching out to the Davenport and asking for them to craft a plan, not looking in the 27-28 timeframe, but looking in the now timeframe in order to present to the board with how that could be done. Obviously, it doesn't mean you'd have to say you're moving forward with it now, but I would really like to see that data in order to be able to make a decision. I do think it's a very important request that they have before the board.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add, I agree. The only thing I would like to add in is also seeing another, I don't know if you would call it option, but another availability of like we did with the courthouse, positioning them together with it already built in that you see that when we can afford it or when it is needed, we could add that fourth elementary school on it. So I guess it would be a third option because I didn't see it in one of those two, but that's one thing I would like to see because that makes sense.
So I think that would be reaching back out to the schools because they had worked with Mosley Architects to get that data, which is a little bit different than working with the finance department. So I guess it is two different.
Two-prong approach.
But I'll ask my colleagues, Ms. Kupka and Mr. Stonehill, how do you feel about providing or bringing back that data for us to entertain in the nearer term, at least?
Mr. Chair, I would support that. I get where you're coming from, Ms. Bender. I don't know that the topography is going to support having them close together, though, if you look at how tight some of the lines are, but it's worth looking at. Yep.
I think we have a majority, at least, that are interested. If Mr. Stonehill, if you want to weigh in, you're welcome to. If you don't, it's fine either way. Okay. I'll ask our citizens as well if you have any, okay, because it's a big project, obviously. So if you have any insights or advice or recommendations, please feel free to weigh in as well.
And we did talk about that idea that if you're going to do the preschool, then very quickly behind it, you need to be looking at the fourth elementary, because I think the taxpayers start to wonder if you're coming back 3 years down the road or whatever, then is that wise planning? Is it better to take the bite and deal with it and know that you've accomplished two big things? If what Dr. Boyd is talking about, that they're truly behind the eight ball right now in the elementary schools, then this is the time to really look at that. So I agree, and we'll have those conversations with Mr. Lau and Davenport.
I would very much like to see the fourth elementary school as well. And so I guess that could go into looking, I guess, to get that more data about that from Mosley, as well as looking at that option to co-locate them on the property. I'm going to let Mr. Stats go because I think he had something. And then Mr. Collins, did you have something?
Just one thing, I think it is a great idea to do the elementary school back to back with the preschool, because I think Mr. Miller pointed out perfectly. I think having one bite taken out the taxpayers, waiting a couple years and taking out another bite is ridiculous. And if you just do it in 1 year and explain it very well why either taxes are increased or what the circumstance may be, I think taxpayers are going to see, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And I think it's definitely needed. If you've been in that elementary school and that preschool, it's definitely needed.
Mr. Collins.
So as you consider the preschool and the elementary school, we also need to consider the property that's there now. So there's a bad habit of the board to leave properties. So half of it's still the school board office. Would you demolish the other half? Would you sell off it? The schools have their servers out of that building. So I think it needs to, don't forget to include what's going to happen when you go back to the middle school for these two sites.
I agree with you. I don't think you want to leave empty buildings around. We've done that enough.
Mr. Chair, I've mentioned that before is having the school board go with the preschool, the school board offices. And I've even asked Dr. Boyd in many of our conversations, what if we just kept where their offices are in the cafeteria? Would you care if you knocked down the other piece to take away the maintenance from us too? And so that was because it's not really it's not the original high school, and it has a lot of maintenance issues. So spending the money to keep maintaining it kind of silly if they're going to stay there to just demolish that building.
Okay.
We would need to include that, the cost of that type of demolition.
You are correct. As part of the plan, yes. All right, I'll ask my colleagues if there's any other particular items you would like to discuss tonight. Otherwise, we can have Ms. Hahn email it out, and then we could provide back our recommendations on what each individually we would like to see and go that route. I would ask that you also provide it to our citizen advisors. I'd like to see what their input as well as and require our priorities.
Yes, I'll get that out to everybody. I need, I'm not sure if Ms. Fish has the email addresses for all of the
citizens,
advisors.
but I'll make sure that we get those and get it sent to them as well as to all of you all.
Appreciate it.
And like Mr. Miller said, well, also he can leave a hard copy for you at the next, the joint meeting that you have on the 30th with the Planning Commission.
30th. Thank you. I was trying to remember that. So I'll ask if there's any other particular items anyone would like to discuss, or if we'd like to just make our priorities known and then come back and have another meeting, I guess, to collate that data, and then we could have further discussions if there's any projects in particular we want to discuss at that point. So I guess then I'll ask, I think having Davenport here would be.
Yeah, and I just need to, we'll stick with the Thursdays, so maybe not next Thursday. Next Thursday would be the 1st. We could do it then. I know that the Service Authority is contemplating having their budget meeting that night. But we could always do it right after if you wanted to do that, or if you wanted to wait until the 8th. I mean, it's up to you.
I'll ask my colleagues, but I'm okay with waiting until the 8th.
Yeah, that would give us a little bit time and give Mr. Loud that time as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so we started the process early this year, and I appreciate that. So I think it does afford us the opportunity to not have to necessarily go back to back to back to back to back. So, okay. Does anyone else have any other business to bring before the board then? Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and it would be to May 30th.
I move to adjourn until May 30th, 6 p.m. here in the boardroom.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.